And so in my further examination, I was dealing with 3.14. All of you here in engineering knows what it's supposed to symbolize. They say it's pi. And I was taught that it came from the Greeks. And you know, I believed it. What else could I do? The teacher told me. And then when I went to Ethiopia and to Egypt and to Nubia, in the ancient records of the ancient Africans of the Nile Valley Africans, there was pi being used 2,000 years before there was such a place as Greece. The first writer of Greece that brought Greece into civilization, because they said the demarcation between uncivilized and civilized have to do with the time when you start writing history. They call it prehistoric and historic. And Homer is the Greek first writer. And Homer said that even the concept of God, Zeus and Apollo, came from Ethiopia. So when you get in the Greek fraternities and sororities, just remember what Homer said. You must have dealt with the Iliad and the Odyssey by now.
My journey has been both insightful and fascinating. I've traveled from Addis to Harar and up into the north to the Tigray province and finally to the village of Najashi, where sits the dedicated to Najashi. It is also a place of the burial ground of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the king himself. So finally we have reached the final point, the beginning of Islam in Africa. We know that in the Meccan period, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, came to Quraysh and came to the people of Arabia with the message of Tawheed. He found great opposition, and by the 4th year, his followers were being killed and tortured to the extent where they were not able to actually defend themselves. And so the Prophet, peace be upon him, then saw the hijrah as a means of releasing them from insecurity to a place of security and protection and freedom. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he sent his followers to Abyssinia, he sent with them a message. And this message, or this letter, to a Najashi, the Negus, the emperor, the ruler of Ethiopia, was in a form that we don't find in any other letter that he ever wrote. Because it's a brotherly letter. It was a diplomatic letter. So this letter was not only seeking sanctuary for his followers, it was actually a very strategic political letter that was connecting the Muslims in the Arabian Peninsula to the believers in one God in Ethiopia, which was a world power at the time. the Quraysh, being the rulers of Mecca and being very familiar with Abyssinia, when they found out that the migrants had gone to Ethiopia, they were terrified, and they recognized that that movement could be a serious change in relationships between the Arabian Peninsula and between the people in Ethiopia. It could be a world power that could be backing the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So they sent Abdullah ibn Rabi' Amr ibn al-As, who later became a very famous Muslim. They sent the two of them, who were known for their wisdom and their cunning and their diplomacy. They sent them to the Najashi, and basically they accused the Muslims of breaking their religion, of disrespecting Christianity. The Najashi then called for the Muslims to come out, and he questioned them. Is it true what these people say? And we also know that the two diplomats from Quraysh, they gave gifts to the courtiers and so they set everything up. But when the king asked the question to the Muslims, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh responded in a very beautiful way, explaining and showing how the Muslims were in a state of ignorance. They didn't respect themselves. They ate rotten meat. They drank intoxicants. They slaughtered the weak. They committed adultery. And then he read from Surah Maryam. At that point, the Najashi cried, and all the people in his court cried. And the Najashi said, by God, this revelation comes from the same candle. The light comes from the same candle that the Bible comes from. He said, I will never let them go. You are free to live in our lands.
Germanic, German people. Then the whole of North Africa, not just Egypt, was a Roman province. Before that Greek, before that Persian in 525 BC. At the most conservative estimate, ancient Egyptian history, pharaonic kingship, begins in 3100 BC. I say most conservative because I don't actually agree with that chronology, because my teacher Robin Walker, big shout out to the OG, taught me that there's reasons to disagree with that chronology. But nonetheless, if we go with the most conservative estimate, can we see that the Persians still got to Egypt 2,500 years after the founding of ancient Egyptian kingship? So who was living in Northeast Africa prior to all of these invasions from people that are not from Africa? Well, let's see. The ancient Greeks saw the ancient Egyptians for themselves. They were in Egypt during the Persian invasion, and of course, then when they ruled Egypt for a little while. Let's see what some of them had to say. Next slide, please. Theodorus of Sicily, General Histories, Book 3, 30 BC. Now the Ethiopians, for those who don't know, Ethiopian literally means of the burnt face. It wasn't an insulting term, it was a generic term for black person, yeah? Back in the day, and it referred to generally all of Africa, and even the Greeks used it to refer to parts of India. If you go to India today, in southern India, you'll find people, some people, as black as any people in Africa. So it shouldn't surprise you if that term was used, but it's a generic term meaning black. Now the Ethiopians, as historians relate, were the first of all men. The proofs of this statement, they say, are manifest. They also say the Egyptians are colonists sent out by the Ethiopians. Now can you see, we're told modern science discovered that Africans were the first people on the planet. But here is an ancient Greek historian saying that Africans were already saying we were the first people on the planet in 30 BC. Herodotus, the father of history. There can be no doubt but that the Colchians are an Egyptian race. Before I heard any mention of the fact from others, I'd remarked it myself. My own conjectures were founded on the fact that they are black-skinned and have woolly hair. Afro. Yeah? The Colchians, by the way, are a group of people in southern Russia at the time. A whole host of other Greek scholars, including Aristotle, and there's loads more I could have put, seemed very unconfused about the ancient Egyptians' ethnicity. We can't have it both ways. Either the ancient Greeks were one of the most intelligent, civilized people ever, or they were so stupid they couldn't recognize the colors of people they saw for their own eyes. But we can't have it both ways, you see? Next slide.
I'm surprised that no one mentioned the book When Egypt Ruled the East by Keith Seeley. What you call Western Asia, what is Western Asia, mistakenly called the Middle East, was an extension of Africa itself. It was really Northeast Africa. And the people were interchangeable, and we seem to have neglected this very important aspect of. Then, in looking at Herodotus was no fool. Herodotus was a good reporter. When you told him something he didn't believe, he said he didn't believe it. But he said the tint of the complexion of the Ethiopians and the Egyptians seemed to be the same. So let us at least concede, that's not an analysis now, that's an observation. Let us concede that Herodotus at least had good eyesight.